We're going to start with 15.5 inches of 1/4 inch 1084 steel. We're going to cover every single step it takes to forge a knife from start to finish. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to separate out my handle material. So I'm laying my material on the edge of my anvil and I'm hammering down, creating a nice separation of material between the blade section and my handle material. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slowly forge my handle material out. I'm forging it down and then I'm going to forge it out at the same time. You'll notice that when you forge a bar stock like this, when you're hitting it from the top down, it tries to make a taco shape. So you'll have to flip it on its side and kind of hammer it flat. I've grabbed a piece of wood so that I can use it to hammer my handle down and get some curvature in my handle. Now I'm actually hammering the entire blade down into the shape of a banana. What this is going to do is it's going to counteract the shape that I'll get from forging in my bevels. When you forge in the bevels, your blade's going to want to bend the opposite direction like a banana. So it's good to give it a pre-bend before you start forging in those bevels. And now you can see me starting to forge in the bevels here. I started at the rear in the ricasso area, and I'll go ahead and I'll forge those bevels on both sides equally until I get all the way out to the tip of the knife. This is a pretty large project right here to forge out by hand. This was almost 1/4 inch thick steel, and it took quite a few heats to get it fully forged. This is my annealing tank, that's perlite. So by putting the knife in here, what I'm doing is it's allowing the knife to cool extremely slowly and annealing the steel back to a soft state so that I can work on it on my grinder. Alright, so the knife stretched out to, what is that? That looks like from front to back 17.5 inches. So we grew 2 inches. The first thing I like to do is grind in my profile, make sure that everything's squared away. Sometimes when you're forging, your profile isn't perfect, so that's when we like to come to the grinder and just square things up and get things where we want them to be, the shape of our handle, the shape of the spine, different things like that. Now you'll see I just put my work rest on here. That's going to make it a lot easier to grind the bevels in on a larger knife. Using that work rest to drag your material over really does help in keeping a nice consistent grind from the hilt of the knife all the way to the tip. So I'm basically just removing all the scale and dialing in the bevels before heat treat. Let's get the forge lit. I like to get my forge nice and hot, and then I can back the temperature off to the lowest temperature that I can get in my forge to heat treat the actual knife. That way I can get a nice consistent heat throughout the full length of the blade. You'll notice when I bring the knife into the shot here, I've got a really nice even heat all the way from the rear of the knife to the tip of the knife. That was a slow motion shot. This is my favorite part of knife making, is the quench. You can watch that line where the hamon is created right there where the oil stops, and you can see the heat in the spine dissipate. I'm going to use a wire wheel here to clean off the forge scale. I do plan on leaving the rough forgings right across the top of this knife to kind of show its history and its past and how it was forged into a knife. But you definitely want to clean off this area with the wire wheel before you go to finish up your main bevels, because you'll scratch them. And here we are back at the grinder. We're going to go ahead and clean up these bevels. Once again, I'm using the work rest to steady my material since it is a long blade. And you'll see, I like to make these nice long passes across the abrasive belt. I put my thumb against the blade and I pull the blade through, and you'll see right there, it gives you really nice, crisp grind lines all the way across the length of the blade. Look at that, real nice. And I still left that rough forge section across the top of the knife. I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of hand sanding. That's what we're doing here. I've created a hand sanding sled, and I use water and wet dry sandpaper. I sanded this all the way out to 500 grit. It takes me about an hour on each side. I start with 220 and I work my scratch pattern up, and then I switch to 500. Here's where you're going to get to see that hamon pop out. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in some ferric chloride and distilled water. It's a 50-50 mix, and I leave it in there for about 20 minutes total. I bring it out about every 5 minutes and clean it off. And while that's working, I like to work my handle material. That's what you're seeing me do here. Right here, I've got my handle materials already glued up. I've already sectioned together 2 different portions of wood, and I'm going through the glue up process here. I've got several videos on my channel about how to do handle fitment and glue up and different things like that. I go in depth if you guys are interested in that. I kind of breeze through this here. You could see me adding pigment to the glue or the epoxy right there. If you're doing a rough forge knife, sometimes there's a couple areas where you hit the tang with the hammer a little harder, so there might be a slight gap in your handle material. So if you just put some darker material in your epoxy, then it kind of fills in those voids and gives you a real seamless connection between your handle materials and the tang of your knife. First, I like to grind off my pins so that I have a nice flat area to lay the knife on. See how now I can lay the knife on the work rest? So once the pins are ground off, I can lay the knife on there and profile all the way around the handle and bring it up to where the metal is. And then I just like to mark out some lines here on both sides of the handle scales. I use these as grind 2 lines so that I can get a nice symmetrical handle shape. Guys, I think I paid $2 for this set of wing divider, or this protractor. Buy it, try it. I guarantee you'll use it again. Once you make your lines, you just bring it over to your grinder and you grind the material off between your lines. How easy is that? Talk about a symmetrical handle the easy way. You take off the brunt of the material with your grinder, grinding between the lines, and that keeps everything real nice and straight. And then we're going to take it over and we're going to finish this up hand sanding. But you take off the majority of the material with the machine, and then when you go over to your hand sanding, I'll show you a couple methods over there that just make this a breeze. After you have all your grind 2 lines, you come in with the shoe shine method and you just round everything out and clean it up till it feels good in your hand and you don't have any hot spots. Pretty easy way to get a handle perfect. The competition chopper build. This was an awesome knife to build. I forged the blade out of 1084 bar stock, differentially heat treated it, got some really amazing activity on the blade, left some of the rough forgings right across the top. I used my new favorite combination of wood for the handle. This is desert ironwood and African blackwood. I'll tell you, I think it's my favorite combination because they're both super dense woods, so they sanded at the same rate. I didn't have to worry about any imperfections where the 2 pieces made up together, and they also polished the same. So I was able to just sand this to 600 grit, hit it on the buffer, and get this beautiful luster. I'll definitely be doing that again. This guy right here is not for decoration. This is a forward lanyard hole, so that when you grab onto it, you can run a strap around your wrist, and that way when you're really getting after it in competition, you start getting fatigued, the knife won't fly out of your hand. So, that serves a purpose. It's not there just for looks, just in case you were wondering. Alright guys, listen, if you're still here, you've enjoyed this video just about as much as I enjoyed making it, which was a lot. And I appreciate that. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. Don't go anywhere, stick around, because I'm going to bring you up close. I'm going to show you better pictures of this, and I want to show you the activity, on this handle and the activity on this blade. I think you guys will be impressed. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.